listening to Unfiltered with Mohammed Uncut, a podcast about personal growth and authentic leadership. If you're looking for tips on how to manage others, get ahead, and make your way up the corporate ladder, this is not the show for you. This podcast is about being of service to others, leading from the heart, and evolving into a better version of yourself. Each episode brings you motivated stories about unfiltered leadership and authentic leaders, those who involve others, use their influence to amplify diverse perspectives, and inspire teams to achieve collective results. If this sounds like you, keep listening. Hello and welcome to the Unfiltered Podcast, and welcome to a very special guest, Louise Reid, my unfiltered guest this afternoon. Thank you for gracing me with your presence. How are you?
I am wonderful, thanks. I'm thrilled to be here, Mohammed.
I'm thrilled to have you here and to share who you are and what you do and the impact that you're making in the work that you're doing and the change that you bring, much needed change to the conversations that we're having. And to start us off, I'm just going to introduce people who don't already know who you are, just give them a better background. So first and foremost, you're a mother, you're a mom to 4 beautiful boys. You're a coaching professional who works primarily with other women to help them achieve their career goals and fulfillment in life. And your calling is to develop the next generation Industry 4.0 leaders. That's your passion. That's what makes you tick. You live in Ottawa, our nation's capital. You bring over 20 years experience to your field. You delve into emotional intelligence, into mindfulness, and you really get into the conversations that need to be had today. And in particular, conversations about how we need to do a better job at recognizing that our world primarily is dominated by men, and in leadership primarily by men and primarily white men. And so we need to figure out how do we do a better job at making room at the table so that there are empty chairs for others to join us at. And I hope that's what we'll talk about today. But for now, I say welcome. And I ask you, what does make you tick? As a mom, as a consultant, as an ally to many women like you who are making a change in the world, who's Louise and what makes you tick?
Wow. Well, first of all, thanks for the intro. So many wonderful things for us to be able to jump into and explore. What makes me tick? You really said it out of the gates. It's my boys. And I learned really early on about what my values were, what I struggled with as I navigated the corporate world and tried to find my way in life as a mom and as a working mom and as a wife and a mother and sister. It's like, how do I actually do something with these values other than just say that these are the things that I value? And so what makes me tick is, especially over the last 5 years, is creating a life where those values are lived every day. And that's not a really very glamorous answer, but there's so much freedom and peace in that.
Well, you are the owner of the world that you create and the story that you write. And keeping it simple means that you know where you're going with this, right? But let me ask you, you talk about values and that's how you govern, how you get things done. Can you share with me, what are your values? What are important to you? And how have you brought them into your personal life and into your professional life and what you do with others?
I want to start by saying it's not easy. It's not easy. And it's a decision I make every day. It really is it's intentional every single day. Now, so I've narrowed it down to 2 core most values. There used to be 5, and I still felt like that was too many, right? Because if all of them are important, if everything's important, nothing's important. We all know that cliche. So my 2 most core values are family and freedom. And I learned the family one the hard way. I moved away from my family. Granted, they're in Toronto. So I grew up in the GTA, and you're in London, I believe.
Yes.
So I grew up in the GTA, originally, although from England, and I had intentions of moving back. And as I've remained in Ottawa, and I've been in Ottawa now longer than I've been anywhere else, I started to realize the impact of not making a choice aligned with something that I had said was my value. And my partner, as we were mentioning, Jay, he would attest to that. I cry often in sadness of not being able to just experience the simplicity of life with my family close by. And so that's why, I think we learn a lot through our pain or our struggles, and through not being true to that particular value, it heightened the importance of that for me, to choose a life and create a life and design a business, which I've done, that aligns with what I want my family to look like. And so that's really why I even started my own business. I separated from my now ex-husband almost 6 years ago, and no one has kids to only see them half time. And I still actually get choked up thinking about that, because it's just part of what goes with families that separate. And so at that time I thought, well, I can't change that, but I do have some control over the situation. And so I decided to start my own business so I could quite simply be at home when the kids leave for school in the morning, and be home, still working, but be home when they returned. That was why I left corporate. That was why, the number one reason why. Now, fast forward to today, I think there's lots of opportunities, especially through COVID, that now organizations are realizing that while women are opting out of the workplace, it's often for these very choices.
Right.
I realize I'm going a bit tangent there. The other value that I have, though, is freedom. And this has really helped me through my own business and the work that I do as a coach with women, as well as my work with leaders, is living aligned with the goal, with my value of freedom. I get to work with whom I choose, when I want, and how I want. That sounds really arrogant, and it doesn't show up that way. It's more that if someone's in a line of business that doesn't really align with with my own values, I'm happy to pass that potential client on to someone else who I think would be a better service to them. And oh my gosh, like, it's just, there's freedom in that. There's freedom in me being able to be my own self, bring my own voice, bring my own magic, and that be appreciated and not have to wear masks. Yeah, I could go on and on about this, and yes, I'll leave it there for now.
Well, you inspire me when you talk about the two F's, because family seems like it could be, well, while certainly those two values are incredibly important, and who am I to judge what your values are, but they resonate with me because I too am about freedom and family. And I find family as a value is restricting because we can't make decisions independent of family. I'd love to be living in New York or downtown Toronto. I can't afford it, and certainly not with. Do I have 3 kids? Yes, 3 kids and a wife. So I have a package. It was a package for whom those people I'm very grateful. But family doesn't give us freedom yet. There's that balance that you found, because even when you talked about freedom, I saw you take that deep breath, and I felt the freedom, and you've been very intentional about how you went about it. And something that you said to me now in the world of COVID, that organizations are realizing that, especially for women, that we have those choices, and not, I guess I kind of want to look at it a different way, because I agree with you, they're choices, but I think they've been constraints. And I think organizations have approached this always by not giving, particularly women. I know recently we've made a law that men also get time off when they have children, but we just haven't made it easy for families to become families. So we haven't, as organizations and Western culture, the value of a family, we haven't made it easy for families to be healthy families. We haven't given them that freedom. And so for us to wait till things got really broken with COVID and a crisis to recognize that families need that freedom, it kind of irks me. But what irks me even more is we're still making them pay. So even though we are at home and women are more at home, but when we look at the data, it's more women who have been hurt by COVID, because they've had to make decision that you alluded to, that if they can't decide, you work at home, many women don't have that flexibility or freedom. And so they've had to make that choice. When their kids were homeschooling, they came back to the home. And I come from a very patriarchal background, Middle Eastern. I grew up in a culture where, our our moms were looking after us. That's the 70s. That's 50 years ago. Today, I'm saddened to know that when we're in crisis mode, we still revert to putting these constraints, particularly on women.
Wow. There's so much to unpack there, isn't there? And I think it's because they're inherent in our system. They're inherent in our thinking. They're inherent in our psyche, in our subconscious, in how we raise our boys. And even still how we're raising our boys. I hear things from my boys that really disappoint me. And they disappoint me because I should start by saying, I think I have amazing boys. There are moments where they will say something that disappoint me because I feel that I have not done a good enough job in doing what I can in the context of my 4 boys to create a different way of viewing the world, of viewing our structures, of viewing our systems. And so that's coming from someone who is a feminist, right? And who knew as soon as I found out I was having boys, I cried, first of all. Every time I found out I was a boy, I cried. And I was like, okay, this is my job. My job is to love these kids up and create men who are going to be part of the solution. And so I say that to suggest that, so I have biases that I'm going to be continuing to perpetuate, even though I have this deep desire to not perpetuate them. So yes, during COVID, during this crisis, we're reverting back. It's because that's still more known. That's what's known. And I think we revert to what is comfortable. We revert to what we know. I was reading there's a Women in the Workplace report put out by McKinsey. They've been doing that for the last 6 years. And the 2020 one just came out. Sorry, the 2020 version just came out. And they were indicating that this one particular woman was quoted, she's a senior manager, I don't remember where, but she's a senior manager at an organization. And she was talking to her husband about, what are we going to do during COVID and kids and schooling and all these things. And she indicated to him that she was thinking about cutting back her hours or taking a leave, and that she was shocked that her husband it didn't even cross his mind that he would do that. I'm just giving you an example of how I don't think we're bad. We're not bad people. So for reverting back, it's not even within our paradigm.
It's systemic. We talk about systemic racism, but there's systemic values that we've inherently built into how we think and how we get things done. And I don't know if that they're wrong. I just don't think that they're the better way to approach things. Again, I'll revert to my upbringing. I come from an upbringing where the women in my life have had such an incredible impact on me. And I think that's why I have such a ability to be in touch with my feminine side and emotionally intelligent, because I had 4 sisters. I have a wife and a daughter, and I have a mother who still lives with me. And even though in her older years, she still impacts me emotionally. And so, and my teachers who ever had an impact on me were the women teachers. The best friends that I've ever had were women. My relationships, important relationships in my life have been women. And I've learned from them. Wasn't always the best male friend or son or brother or husband, whatever, but I've learned. And, to not recognize that women are more emotionally intelligent and they have more of a nurturing capability than men do. And, the higher force that be, whatever you call it, God or Mother Nature, placed the ability and the grace and the miracle of life within the female body, right? So I think it's okay to recognize that women are capable of. But even when it comes to having a baby, women don't do it alone. And raising a family, women shouldn't have to do it alone. And braving the world of working, and whether it's corporate or otherwise, a woman shouldn't have to do it alone. She should have the freedom to be able to do it. But when she chooses to opt in for family, she shouldn't be penalized by having to forgo her freedom, more so than men do. And so, to always say, well, you can't be in a leadership position because you're going to take time off, or you've got a family, or right. How do we rewrite a new paradigm that allows men to be equal partners and that allows women to be equal partners? And that was a question.
Yeah. And it's a great question. And I love all of your additional commentary and thinking about all of this. And I respect where you come from as well. That sounds like a really great
it's
place
a tough
that you were
world, between who I am and who I am and who I've been, and who I am and want to be. It's very tough. It's an ongoing struggle.
We're always evolving, aren't we?
Yes.
And if we're not evolving, well, I'm not sure what that would mean.
We're not living.
We're not living.
Yeah.
And so the question, I think, is around, well, what do we want our future to be? And then we reverse engineer from there. I think that we have to create a different vision of the future, leave behind the models and paradigms in which we have built this current structure. Let's dream first. Mm-hmm. And I think then we will start to explore and find other solutions that if we did it the other way around, we wouldn't get there, because we would still be solving the problem through the paradigm and model and frame mindset that the whole problems were created. So if I'm thinking about, so I love men, I've got a wonderful partner, my dad was just superb. I think it's because of my dad that I am actually as strong a feminist as I am, because I knew no different than I could do what my brothers did. It wasn't until I sort of entered the big world, quote unquote, that I realized, oh, the world sees us differently. This isn't right. Where was I going with this? I've got so many things to say. So yes, so our system, if we think about when, after, say it's after the war, or when business really, as we know it today, was sort of created and built, generally speaking, it was built by white men. Mm-hmm. So who else would they build it for but for white men? So the systems, the frameworks, the policies, of course, who else are they going to build it for?
Perpetual.
Right? Totally makes sense. But then when other people with other preferences and other needs have entered the workforce, we've had to just conform to that. So it's no fault. It's just now that we've got this recognition that we are far more diverse, and what worked then doesn't work now, and it's certainly not going to take us to what we imagine the future to be. I think we have to be much more creative and flexible with how we design. And I think we have to have fun in the design. We have to have all voices in the design phase. It has to include people with disabilities. It has to include all, right? All, because we already know, you know this and I know this, that the data is so clear that businesses do better with diverse voices. And yes, that for me is interesting, how even though we've been talking about that for years, even though that has been known for years, how there is still resistance.
It's our comfort, right? We resist. I think there are some who resist because their interest is not to widen the scope and allow others to sit at the table where decisions can be made. And I think others don't know any better. They're not aware. And I earlier when you talking about dream, you made me think of Shakespeare. I think Hamlet. To sleep, to dream, right? Perchance to dream, whatever it was. But I think it's to awaken and to become more aware and a chance to dream and to do something different. And we have been asleep for so many years in our comfort that this old normal was anything that we were going to continue perpetuating. And I don't want, a new normal. I want, like you said, I want to envision a world where we all matter, where our voices are all heard, and where we're all seen, and our colors are celebrated, and our languages are like music. And we need to allow that to happen. We need to embrace it, because this, and I know to continue talking about the pandemic is almost today is a little cliche, but let's face it, we are in the midst, we're in a second wave. We are at crossroads, and the turning point could be in another year. I did something today. I never get a flu shot. I got a flu shot. It's been 20 something years flu shot. So I'm thinking differently. I'm embracing that what's always worked isn't going to work going forward. And so having a dream to write this new paradigm, I don't even think it should be a choice for us. It should be, this is what we're going to do. And you do this every day when you work with your clients, and as a mother, you raise boys, because you said you listen to these conversations. And I got to give it to you, because you may think, oh, I didn't do enough. But I think the fact that you're aware that you're hearing these conversations and being intentional. Sharon Stone had a recently, I'll say this, there's Drew Barrymore, I guess, has a show, and I was watching her interview Sharon Stone the other day. At first, it was your typical two white women, no disrespect here, sitting on a couch virtually. Each one of them had their doggies and their, that's the only thing that kind of just irked me is, come on, you're doing a show, you don't need the dog. It gave a different message. But if they took the dogs out and the whole petting thing and actually focused on more on the conversation, Sharon Stone was saying how she, as a mom, would hear conversations that her boys were having, exactly the comment that you made. And so these conversations are being had, and I think we're being intentional about shifting the way that we speak. As parents, as leaders, we have to do that. But you're doing that. Can you share with me what you're doing in your role as a coach, as an ally to other women who is making their voices heard?
Sure. So I do a variety of things. One of them is, yes, so through coaching, I do some through as well, teaching and volunteering with women's organizations. I'm particularly keen and passionate about working with an organization that supports immigrant women who are highly educated. They're in the tech field, and they come to Canada and are struggling to find work. And I've worked in the tech field, so how can I not? Like, it's just, they're a gift, they're a joy to me. And I also work and support women through my own radio show and podcast, where it's not exclusively women, but I just tend to have a bend for wanting to create a platform where other women can showcase the good work that they do and the businesses that they run, and just have conversations around our ability to elevate one another and what we need to be doing differently. Again, I invite men to the table and love to have the conversations with men. We're all part of the solution. And we get a bit grittier. It saddens me that the number one thing that I work with all women on, this includes someone who has got her own really successful medical practice. She's a specialist in one of the Western provinces. It includes working with a CEO of a high profile organization, and then women who are new into leadership. The most common thing is confidence. And it saddens me, but continues to be my fuel, because it doesn't show up right away. Because on the surface, they have taken action towards achieving great success from the outside, right? They look extremely successful, and they have been. But once you peel a few layers back, the self-sabotaging thoughts that they have, the imposter syndrome that they have, it paralyzes women eventually at some point. Some are able to navigate it a little differently and be able to get to these high places, perhaps while compartmentalizing, or perhaps other people in their life who've really carved out those opportunities for them, as the women have done good work. Whatever the reason is, that is a consistent piece and thread through all of the women that I work with. And so that's why I feel compelled to continue to work with women. And then in leadership, in terms of working with organizations, I embed some of that within the leadership work that I do. It starts with leading self. So I don't necessarily at the beginning talk about the gender stuff. We don't talk about inclusion stuff. That comes later. Once you use the word awaken, and that's completely it. Leaders, whether it's coaching clients and coaching with women, leaders, I'm sure you feel the same way. They need to pause long enough to reflect and awaken. right? To connect inwards, to be able to then show up as a leader that we need in the world today, to make the hard decisions and to have the courage to speak up to injustice and make the change and be part of dreaming that new future and inspiring others along the way then to create it.
Well, kudos to you. But you're right, and change starts with us. And if we can't be self-aware and take care of ourselves and look inwards to what makes us tick or even ticks us off, we certainly can't create those relationships with others. We're not going to be able to build bridges. We're going to erode trust. And rather than being inclusive, even when we have good intentions, we're going to burn, every opportunity to, to create a garden where we can sit and kind of break bread together, right? Like the imagery here, but I'm thinking, this has to be where it's holistic and we feel that we're invited to sit and enjoy the presence of the other. But if we're not comfortable in doing that, if we can't show up as ourselves, we're not going to participate as ourselves. And you mentioned this is something that plagues even the most successful women you work with. And I deal with the imposter syndrome every single day, but I think hearing it from a woman, because they just have so many things stacked up against them, I'm guessing, but I'm sure you're probably not. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that even the most successful women that you've talked to still have this insecurity, this imposter syndrome, the self-sabotage? Why is that?
So this is from experience, but it's also through what the data tells us. So through what research has found, which there's been a lot of research on this, is that the expectations of women to you've got to be poised, but not look bitchy. Sorry, am I allowed to say that?
No, go nuts.
But not be bitchy. It's
unfiltered here.
Right. That's right. That's the name of the podcast. You can't be aggressive. Oh, but it can't be too meek.
Right.
We walk a much finer line. So let's just say, because men are held to standards too. There are standards. So let's say men are walking on a balance beam. Women are walking on a tiny piece of thread.
Yeah.
So we are being judged differently. And again, the data shows that. And so, of course, then the only way we're going to get ahead is to be able to be hyper aware and conscious and of what we say, what we do, how we dress. I mean, thinking about what women have to do in the morning just even to get dressed. Is this outfit too tight? Is this dress too short? Is it too long? Do I look too matronly? Do I look like a slut?
Right.
It's if I think
we
about
don't think that.
Right.
Yes.
Again, men have got standards, so it's not that they can't just put track pants on and walk in the office. But to get to go back to your question, these are just some examples of the psyche of what goes on in many women's minds that have them ultra judgmental about themselves because the world judges us that way. And also there's something called the likability bias. And it's shown, it's been proven that as women get more successful, they are less liked.
Especially by other women.
Oh my gosh. Like we are just...
You want to go back to the B word you used earlier?
Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Why? Is it human nature or is it something else?
I think, so my degree is in biology, I think there's some nature here as well.
Right.
I think there's that competition there. But I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's our thinking and expectations. We have these, society has these expectations on, say, how women should behave in various situations. And so all of us have learned that, regardless of the gender we are. We've all learned that.
Right.
And so if we're not aware of how these types of assumptions and these types of generalizations might be impacting others, we don't know to behave any differently. So it's the same reason why men do it to us. That's why women do it.
Well, Louise, a man walks into a boardroom. He's a senior leader, a CEO. He doesn't even think twice of how manly or not manly he has to be. I think about a woman walks into the similar environment. And all of a sudden, to your point, she has figured out how stern should I be? You know, how loud does my voice has to resonate? You know, do I look bitchy? Do I look friendly? Do I, right? I'm a very self-aware man. I don't think about these things. I probably think, oh shit, how do I look? But beyond that, I'm not thinking about anything that's necessarily my gender. And yet I think when a woman shows up in a place where she is the center of attention, or she is, you know, she's the one making decisions, or she has a role that impacts others, all of a sudden her gender comes into question, and not comes into a question, but comes into question. People, you know, all of a sudden have to value how well she will do her job or not, just because of her gender. And why? I go, you know, just go back to these systemic things. And if so, how the hell are we going to change things?
Yeah, so I do want to go to that, because that's really, really important. One of the things there were two things I wanted to mention. One was that I was told early in my career that I smiled too much. And then I really worked on that. Imagine that, right? Being told you to smile too much. Yeah. And in true Louise fashion, I then over-rotated. And then I was told that I didn't smile enough. I was like, oh my God, okay. So, you know, so it still is a work in progress, I suppose. And then there was another situation where I was asked to speak. I can't say too much information because I don't really want to divulge who the company was, but I was asked to speak about this important piece of work that I'd been working on at the company, to present it to the board. And I said, well, I'm happy to present it to the board, but I don't know why this other person wouldn't do it. I'd rather. I guess great. I'll take it. And the VP told me, you're cute and you've got an English accent, so the men will like that. And so the VP thought then that this new program, which needed to get board approval, that would be a better. So, and that was not very many years ago.
Wow.
That was not very many years ago. So how do we start to make changes? I mean, it changes a lot at various levels, all the levels, isn't it? So legislative changes have to continue to be made. We cannot rely on that because discrimination has been illegal for how long, and it's still been happening, right? I think there have to be some more significant consequences. I can't pretend to know that world very well at all. And then if I sort of roll back and go into the other direction, I think it starts with individual leaders, right? We have to make the choice to do better. We have to hold our leaders accountable for better. I think that we are really great at wanting our leaders to do the right thing, but do we hold the mirror up to ourselves? And are we doing what we are telling our leaders to do? No, I think it's executives who are sending their teams on unconscious bias training. They don't do it.
Yeah.
No.
Let me know how it was.
Right.
It's role playing as opposed to role modeling, right?
Yeah. And so this is not going to be quick. I feel this is why I'm really quite passionate about working with the next generation of leaders. To be honest, I'm kind of frustrated with the old white guy. I'll wait. I'm not trying to create a better future for me. I'm trying to create a better future for my kids. So I'll wait. I will be patient. And if that's what I feel like my legacy will be, is to support and nurture and develop the next generation of leaders who are able to develop this and hone the skills of what the next generation leader needs to be, even in the context of something more toxic. And that's why leading self is so critical, right?
So can I challenge you?
Yeah.
Can I challenge you? Because I don't disagree with you. I love the fact that you see the hope in the younger generations, and I think they're stepping up more, millennials and Gen Zers, to them, it's almost second nature. They expect it. It's part of who they are. But I want to say our generation, I think we're kind of in.
Yeah.
Right? There's still a lot of us in decision-making positions. And I don't want to say south of the border and there's an election looming, but those sort of leaders are setting the trend or setting a precedence. B, they're probably not going anywhere anytime soon enough. And C, they're still breaking the world. So George Floyd dies, is murdered because such leaders exist. Women continue to be told not to smile because such leaders exist. And I'm just afraid that enough of those leaders and their antics will slip through the cracks, that all the work that you're doing with your 4 beautiful boys might just go to waste because 1 or 2 bad leaders infiltrated our abilities to create a new army of emotionally intelligent young girls and boys who become the new generation of leadership. So how do we get these other people, men and women, who still refuse to recognize that we're doing it wrong? What message can you give them? And I want to kind of lead you into, this is my thought of the week. So it's the unfiltered thought of the week. If you could impact that generation, what would you do? What advice or change would you propose to them?
I would ask for, so this is kind of blue sky, right?
Hey,
I would say, let me show you. Give me a week. Give me a week, and let me show you what it can look like. After a week, take it or leave it, but let me show you. And so, do you change systems in a week? Of course not. But can you ignite the hearts and minds of people in a week? You sure can. To show up in a way, in a different way that's meaningful with one another, the work, how they show up for work, what it is that they do that day, how it is that they, there's that intangible feeling and energy. There's a sense of being willing to put forward that extra effort. There are early signs of those things that you can start seeing in a week. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I love your hope, because while we're inherently accepting the status quo and our comfort in the way we've always done things, I think there are a few people that are inherently evil or bad or want to do things the wrong way. I don't think there are many. I think people are just bent on profits over people. They're more focused on being, alpha males are wanting to get the work done and move forward and, be the best company and all this sort of stuff. And sometimes they don't understand that people matter. I think people do matter more than that, because when you invest in your people work for you and they become a free sales force. They become your marketers, they become your ambassadors, and you almost don't have to market. So I think if we can reach those leaders, to your point, and show them the blue sky and say, give me an hour. And if they give you a week, I applaud you. But if they can give us an hour and just give us their ear and listen, perchance to dream, to awaken, and to aware. So I share your hope, I share your dream, and blue skies rain on, because we can do it. I think if ever there was a time during this pandemic, I feel the phoenix will rise. This is our collective alchemy of becoming better people, and we can do it. And Louise, today you've been part of that change and desire to do things better. And I know you'll continue to do that with your family and your clients and everyone in whose life you touch and you impact. So thank you for being my unfiltered guest today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
All the best.
Thank you for listening to Unfiltered, the show about authentic leadership and personal growth. Like what you heard? Click subscribe, share it, and tell a friend about it. And don't forget to leave a rating.